So when you close your eyes, what is the weather? Is it stormy and cloudy? Are there lightning strikes of pain, or is it clear skies and calm and inner peace? And so one of the first things I like to do is just check that weather. Even if there's a storm, you can see the beauty in it. And then there's usually a message in that energy. So anxiety is always a surface level energy. It radiates off something deeper. Healing for me is integration.
Mm.
And when we're the opposite of healed, that's when we're broken into pieces, usually. A lot of people mentally wrestle with their anxiety or their stress, and then they just exhaust themselves and they feel worse. So, what do we do instead? Let me put it into four easy steps.
Uh-huh.
Find it,
Yep.
feel it, face it, heal it.
So, David, hey, thanks so much for joining us. So you've helped millions of people meditate through Insight Timer and your meditation school. But how did your own journey with meditation begin?
Sure. And Garrett, it's so good to see you, buddy. I started when I was young. I was 16, and my brother came home from college. I think he was experimenting with some psychedelics, and he said, "You got to open your mind, bro." And he took me to a Barnes and Nobles or Borders, and it was the year 2000. I mean, the memory's so crystal clear. There was a stack of books on the ground. It was all The Power of Now,
Oh,
and it just started getting popular.
uh,
I picked one up. I took it home. I'm not joking. It was so. You can look this up. It was the Mets Yankees World Series. I believe it was game one. It was October of the year 2000. My parents are screaming to come downstairs to watch. I'm in my room just reading. I mean, by page three, whatever, something just awakened in me. I can't remember the exact words I was reading, but it was something along the lines of most of the time we spend our energy projecting into the future or back into the past, and we're rarely in
mm,
this moment. And when the truth of that hit me, just there was this deep consciousness shift. I did not go downstairs for a very long time. I was just in another energy. And then I spent my teenage years meditating, reading a lot, and oddly salivating about going to live in an ashram in India. It was still like dial-up internet days a bit, and so I mean, year 2000 on the tail end of that. But I'd get on there and look at ashrams in India, research
mhm.
stuff. And after college, I went and lived in the Himalayas for a while, lived in the ashrams, practiced a lot of the Eastern traditions. I got my degree in Western philosophy, and then I went and practiced a lot of the Eastern traditions, Vedanta, Zen, Hinduism, Buddhism, did a lot of meditation retreats, I used to guru chase, sitting with as many gurus as I could find. And so my journey started really early. And so I've been very enthusiastic about meditation and spirituality since my teenage years. And here I am in my 40s, still enthusiastic about it.
That's great. I mean, Power of Now is like the gateway book for so many people, including myself. It really made me want to get into conscious media. Um, so yeah, love hearing that. Um, Interesting. So, you've taught in so many settings, from, the traditional spiritual environments that you've kind of talked about already to, modern digital platforms. Like, how has your meditation or how has your understanding of meditation evolved over time? And like, was there an incident that made you realize it's more than just a tool for focus or relaxation, but actually like transforming consciousness?
For sure, there was a few formative moments. I mean, one of them, I was sitting with the guru I had in India, and I thought he was a perfect being.
Mm.
And somebody asked him a really easy question, and for whatever reason, he just snapped and just got super angry and started yelling.
Oh,
And at that, I was probably 23, and I just started shaking. My whole world kind of shattered at that moment. And I was like, okay, I'm missing something about the human condition here. I thought you just sit still and then find enlightenment and you're done, you know.
mm,
And so at that time, my friend's girlfriend was an intuitive healer, reader person. I didn't even know what that meant.
mm.
And she sat me down at a restaurant in Rishikesh in India, sitting on like pillows on the ground. A lot of those restaurants you can sit on the ground. And she closed her eyes and she did a intuitive reading on me. And it was like she was looking into me in a way nobody else had ever done. I mean, at one point, I literally remember I had this itch on my chest. I was like, "Oh, don't move your hands. She's reading you. You might mess it up. Don't scratch it." I'm just thinking this, not saying it. And she goes, "Man, it looks like your chest is really itchy." And I was like, "Oh God." I mean, that was just the tip of the iceberg. She somehow was able to see how I was feeling, some internal thoughts, parts of myself I hadn't shared with anyone. And I said, "How the hell did you do that?"
Uh-huh.
And she pointed me towards a school in Hawaii, and I ended up moving there and spending 7 years at that school, eventually being the director of it and teaching the intuitive arts and the healing work. So I think my background is everything from very kind of fundamental awareness, presence practices from Eckhart Tolle,
Hmm.
Western philosophy, Eastern traditions, and some of that energetic healing woo-woo stuff. And
Hmm.
honestly, I use any tool that I think works. I am not part of any group, tradition, guru lineage. I don't want to be part of any group ever again, ever, Garrett. I'm done.
Yeah.
No interest, no interest of dressing with like everyone else or anything. So I just use the tools that work. And so I do integrate some of those intuitive tools with mindfulness tools, and I just pull anything out of the tool belt I think is going to be helpful for someone.
Interesting. Yeah. I've also always been skeptical of groups and gurus.
Mhm.
And like I think most people need a teacher, like at least early on, which makes it so tricky, right? Because you have to have a lot of discernment around, you know, is this teacher right for me? Like, what are they about? And at what point am I going to leave the group or like leave the teaching? And it's different for everyone. But I don't know if you have any thoughts around that. I mean, for you, it's pretty obvious because you saw your teacher like, lose his shit. But
Yeah.
like, not
Well,
everyone has that.
I had another experience, Garrett, where uh, s- after that first session with the intuitive healer person, I had gone and gotten in some initiation in some Kriya yoga thing where
Mm.
some other guru was like touched my chakras and did his thing. And then I started having nightmares, like vivid, intense nightmares. And
Oh,
so I went back to this intuitive healer friend and I said, "Hey, I am tripping right now. I don't even know what's happening because this is outside of my wheelhouse. Can you help?" And she sat and did another session with me. And it was almost like pulling an entity out of me. It was like this intense, weird energy. I could feel it. It's like taking goo or lard off of you. That's what it was like. Ugh. That's almost like in Ghostbusters when that green guy goes through you. And that I was crying and I just shook off this weird energy. And so you do have to be careful. And I think, you can try to avoid those experiences, but it was formative for me. And I'm glad I went through it. Some people have way worse experiences. My buddy Scott Stabile, who I teach with, he spent 13 years in a cult,
hmm.
and it took him 13 years to get out of it and realize how bad the dynamics were.
Wow.
So I felt kind of lucky. So I've had a number of those experiences, and it is hard to find it, sometimes the right teachers, but we always get the teachers we need at the moment. I think you have to focus on what's good and the tools that you learn, and then move on when you're ready to move on. I've had teachers guilt me into sticking around. You
Hmm.
need me. All of those anytime a dynamic gets weird, it's time to go.
That's, I think, a very good rule of thumb.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. Let's talk a little bit about your book, Seven Energies of the Soul. Um, so here you're tying your kind of background with energy work to personal growth. I guess before we even kind of get into the subject matter for any aspiring authors listening, so this was published by Hierophant. I happen to be friendly with Randy Davila and the folks and the good folks over at Hierophant. Like, how'd you get hooked up with them? How'd you get your book published? What was that process like?
Yeah, well, actually, 20 years to the month of picking up Power of Now, New World Library, who you
I
also
do some
work
work.
with,
Yeah.
yeah, they offered me a publishing deal as well. I thought that was really cool, full circle, since they did the Power of Now.
Hmm.
Um, but Randy, I can't remember who connected me with Randy, friend of a friend, maybe, and he just thought we would be a good fit. Actually, I have the book right here. They did a great job with the cover. I'll show you if you like. There it
Yeah.
is, Seven Energies of the Soul. There's a free quiz if you want to find out what energy you are, dominant. And so basically, when when I put this book together, I was just reflecting on all my years of work with everyone and where people were getting stuck and what they needed help with. And I found that most people would put a lot of energy into one or two areas of life, work or relationship, something along those lines. And then all their others would falter.
Hmm.
People would be overachieving in one space and underachieving in another. And so the kind of the fundamental view that I was going with was that all of us, we have all of these different energies. We have the creator in us, the healer, the lover, the warrior, the artist, the explorer, the master. And if we don't feed each of them, we lose balance in life. I think we fulfill our purpose when we rise to our potential in life and find balance. Spending a lot of time living in Europe, what I've realized is the happiest people always have balance.
Mm.
So if you're kind of a healer with no boundaries and you're just fixing everyone all the time in your life, that's going to drain you. If
Hmm.
you're a creator and you're a workaholic and you leave no time for love and relationship, that's going to drain you. If you're always having to be the teacher, the guru, the master, telling everyone what they should do with their life without ever receiving or without ever relaxing and experiencing pleasure, then shit gets weird, as we know.
Yeah.
So finding each area of life where you're not living to your potential, where you're doing too much and dialing it back and finding that balance. And so that's how I structured the book. And when people read it, it's really a reflection on, okay, where in my life am I fulfilling myself and where am I not?
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, I do think, this tendency in America is to kind of overdevelop in one specific category of energy, which seems to be kind of unique to us. Like we don't put a lot of value typically on balance. When I
Hmm.
first, so I've read your book, and kind of when I first got introduced to the energies, my first impression was, oh, well, I'm all of these things. But then as you kind of go more deeply into it, like I might score myself like a 5 on some of these and more like, 8, 9, or 10 on others, or maybe even like a 12.
Yeah.
um, so yeah, I definitely got your point as I went deeper into it. Like, what do you think it is about our society, our culture that causes people to, overdevelop typically in one particular area?
So let me tell it in story form.
Yeah.
One of my favorite TED Talks is this Indian philosopher who I've interviewed, Devdutt uh, Patnaik, if I could say his name right. And he tells a story about how Alexander the Great, when he went to invade India, he met a yogi. And that's historical, but he imagines what their conversation was like. And so Alexander's looking at this naked yogi sitting on a rock, and he goes, "What are you doing with your life?" And the guy says, "Focusing on nothingness." And Alexander laughs and he goes, "That is a waste of a life." And the yogi goes, "Well, what are you doing with your life?" And Alexander goes, "I'm going to conquer the whole world." And then the yogi laughs and he's like, "That's a waste of a life." Because in the East, you live forever over and over to learn lessons. You come around again and again. So you conquered the world this time. Who cares next time? In the West, Alexander comes from the Greek mythology, right? He comes from you climb Mount Olympus, you become a god, you conquer the world. In the East, you climb Mount Meru and you realize there's infinite peaks
Mm.
and you waste your time. So in the West, one life, you have one life to live and you better do the best and you better conquer the world. In the East, you live in forever. Your job is to get out of this cycle called samsara. So
Mm.
very different worldviews. So that's why in the West, that's where technology has developed, space travel. We want to go further, we want to grow. It's never enough. The richest person in the world at the moment, his ambition is to go to the next planet and the next planet and the next planet. That ambition never ends. And
Mm.
you could be the richest person in the world. It's not enough. Now I need to go to all the outer planets, right? It's basic. It's almost funny,
Yeah.
and so I think we need that balance. Yes, you should have ambition. You want to create. You want to develop. You want to grow. But also there's the turn outward, which is Western, and then the turn inward, I think, which is what the treasure we get from the East. And
Mm.
so the balance maybe is where we bring Alexander the Great and the Yogi together, and we have both of those in us and fulfill both of those.
Mm. Beautiful. That's a good answer, David. You were ready for that question. All right, so I mean that's probably a good segue into this album that you've created with us. It's called From Anxiety to Rest. Excuse me. It's a two-track album, and so the first one is called Calming the Storm, which I guess is really kind of a relaxation, mind-taming exercise. But you do it beautifully, through kind of visual metaphor, that sort of harkens back to nature. It, what inspires you to use this, natural imagery to sort of shape your exercises?
It's interesting. I created a video this morning on this topic. So one of the techniques that I love to use the most in meditation is to check have myself check my own internal weather, and I have my students do this as well. So when you close your eyes, what is the weather? Is it stormy and cloudy? Are there lightning strikes of pain, or is it clear skies and calm and inner peace? And so one of the first things I like to do is just check that weather.
Mm.
And then if the weather is stormy, for example, and maybe there's some clouds of anxiety in this case, what do we do about that? Now, if you've ever tried to punch a cloud, you'll know you'll fail. Right? Plane could fly through a cloud. And so a lot of people mentally wrestle with their anxiety or their stress, and then they just exhaust themselves and they feel worse. So what do we do instead? I think sometimes anxiety is just sped up pain.
Mm.
And so what I like to do with any energy, whether it's anxiety or any other form of resistance or pain, is almost like if you were to put your hand on a piece of cloth and just to feel, is it silk? Is it linen? Is it cotton? You just feel the texture of the energy. So that's how we check our internal weather as well. Just
Hmm.
feel the texture of anxiety, of fear, of pain, whatever it is, and get a sense of it and start to be calm with it. So even if there's a storm, you can see the beauty in it. And then there's usually a message in that energy. So anxiety is always a surface level energy. It radiates off something deeper.
Mm.
And most people, they just want to get rid of the anxiety.
Right.
They don't actually uncover what it is. So anxiety is a alarm bell that there's something bothering you. So let's turn inward, let that cloud be there, let it pass, and then let's slow down and go a bit deeper. And so I find when I guide meditations, if I make it visual
Hmm.
and if I use nature metaphors, it already relaxes the nervous system.
Yeah.
And I think it really helps people drop in and get out of their heads.
Yeah, totally. And like that was kind of my experience of it as well. Because when you invite someone to sort of turn inward and like look at their own anxiety, for instance, or psychological content that is unpleasant, like you don't really want to do that. But when you use the weather metaphor, I kind of get curious about it, and it seems more interesting, more appealing, and it does seem to have like a direct effect on my nervous system. Um,
Exactly.
yeah.
In IFS, internal family systems, it's often said you want to be calm, curious, and confident. Now,
Mm.
confident we'll get there, but I think we can start with calm and
Hmm.
curious instead of in resistance to anxiety or to whatever energy that is unpleasant. The core of meditation is learning to get neutral and accepting of energies that seem unpleasant, and then that's kind of the first initiation into something deeper. And most humans, if they sit for 5 or 10 minutes and meditate, they just never get past that first layer of energy,
Mm.
and then they spin all the time, and then they're burning out, and they're not nearly as fulfilled as they can be. And so I like to help people go under that energy, get through it, and then there's so many more interesting layers. And then after you get through the initial, most humans have just a lot of pain.
Hmm.
Being born is painful. So, I mean, puberty is painful, right? Breakups are painful. Going to work every day could be painful. Getting sick is painful. Aging is painful. And so life can be very painful. But if we can get through some of that pain, then we might start having creative thoughts, inspiration, spirituality starts to flower. There is so much more waiting for us on the other side of pain. But most people, they hit pain, they freak out, and they back off. And so my job as a teacher is to help kind of guide you through that energy in a safe, grounded, almost more pleasant way, if you're curious minded. And then when that shifts, man, your whole life can start to open.
Mm. Well put. Um, cool. So turning to the second track now, entitled From Anxiety to Rest, which is actually also the title of the entire album. But you talk about releasing the need to heal, fix, and solve, which can be a radical statement for, a culture obsessed with self-improvement. What does true healing mean to you?
So healing for me is integration.
Mm,
And when we're the opposite of healed, that's when we're broken into pieces, usually. And so there's a piece here, let's call it pain, let's call it anxiety, whatever it is. And we see it external from us, and then we have to fix it like we're fixing a car.
right.
Yeah, if I fix that damn part of me, then I'll be better and people will love me.
Mm,
And that is the opposite of what works. It's so counterintuitive. The learning to relax into not fixing it is actually when the healing and the repair begins, because it's not the pain itself that's the issue, it's the resistance to it. It's
mm,
the judgment towards it that keeps it separate and keeps you keep feeding that pain body, let's call it that,
mm,
that collective negativity. And so when we back off of that, then a shift and a healing starts, and we reintegrate as we accept who we are and accept how we feel. So that's how I see healing. And then you can find out who you really are. If you're broken into pieces, it's not as simple as, opening the closet door. There I am. No,
right.
you're going to find your core self when you heal and when you integrate.
Hmm. So let's see if I'm understanding your integration process. So first you're just observing it, right? You're seeing it, and then you're allowing it. Is it?
Let me put it into four easy steps.
Uh-huh.
Find it,
Yep.
feel it, face it, heal it. That's how I
Uh-huh.
like to do it. And
Uh-huh.
so find it, let's check the inner weather. Okay, there's a cloud right here. There's pain. I can see it. It's some form of trauma or whatever it is. So now I'm finding it. Now let me actually just, without judgment, feel it and accept it the way it is instead of trying to change it. So instead of fixing it, figuring it out, analyzing it, healing it, I'm just going to feel it. Just
Hmm.
let myself feel it the way it is. And then after you feel it, it comes closer and it's less of an enemy. Then I can face it and go, oh, I see where that came from. Maybe a painful memory arises. You face that as well and you sit with that. Usually there's a feeling and then there's an image.
Uh-huh.
So we have to face the feeling and then we face the image. And sometimes images come with narration and thoughts and all the stories, but really at the core, there's a feeling and there's an image.
Hmm.
Uh, and then that's when we heal. And when we really face it, sometimes it'll pop, it'll melt, and then it'll integrate it back into us and
Hmm.
we heal. So find it, feel it, face it, heal it. That's kind of the process I like to walk through.
And so to do those four things, we need to stay present, right?
Yeah.
And anxiety often comes from projecting ourselves into the future, right? So what practices or insights do you think can help people to stay truly present in the moment when fear might be pulling them forward?
Absolutely. So don't ever resist what's actually happening. Let that be the doorway or the portal into being present.
Mm,
So if I say to you, I'm feeling fear is pulling me into the future, then can you be present with the energy of feel fear pulling you into the future?
mhm,
I'm I'm spinning out on regret about the past.
mhm,
Okay. Can you be present with the feeling of spinning out about the regret that you have towards the past? So you're present with no matter what energy. How about the energy of, I cannot be in this moment? It's too painful.
mhm,
Okay. How about be present with the energy of, I cannot be in this moment? It's too painful.
mhm.
So there's no way around that then, no matter what it is.
Yeah,
Uh, some people they're hitting rock bottom. Like, I don't want to be here anymore. I
right.
don't want to be on this planet. So let me just share this real quick. I had a professor in college, Eastern religions. He drew a line on the chalkboard. It was like huge 300-person lecture hall. We had those old green chalkboards. He drew a huge horizontal line. On one side, he wrote enlightenment. On the other side, he wrote suicide. And then he
Hmm.
put a check mark in the middle. And he said, most of us swing from wanting to be here to not wanting to be here, not wanting to be here to wanting to be here. The total acceptance of being here is enlightenment. The total resistance, I don't want to be here anymore, would be suicide.
Hmm.
And so, even if you hit that rock bottom, I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
Can you just be present with the energy of I don't want to be here? And even that can unfold and shift.
Yeah. That's what, so I mean, that's basically the dark night of the soul, right? And there's, famous contemporary teachers that experienced exactly that. Like again, going back to Eckhart Tolle, he was like on a park bench and kind of suicidal, and Byron Katie, the same thing. And it's just this subtle shift that happens when they kind of moved into the present, and all of a sudden there was this realization that came over them that really stuck.
Yes.
For a lot of us, it doesn't really stick right away, or it takes a lot of work for it to stick more and more. But for certain individuals, it's like a light switch gets flicked, and like they stay that way, which is pretty remarkable.
Wouldn't that be nice? Man,
Yeah,
my it's been so much harder. Let me give that just a little bit more structure and
yeah,
context. So we have two eyes to see out. When we close them, we have one that sees in. Let's call it the mind's eye. So when we see inwards with the mind's eye, we have what we call insight. So we see inwards.
mm,
And so we're not looking for an answer to a thought. A lot of people, they have a ruminating thought sequence, and they think if they think more, it'll come to a conclusion and they'll feel better. And that is an illusion. So
mm,
instead of finishing thoughts like an equation, like it's a math problem, what you want is not an answer to a problem, but an insight.
mhm,
And so when we have an insight or an aha moment or a realization or a samadhi or whatever Eckhart Tolle had, he would call it an awakening,
mhm,
right? That's when something shifts in us. And so for Eckhart, I think his initial awakening, it was like middle of the night. He was suicidal and he was having thoughts, I cannot live with myself anymore.
mm,
And then he had a realization, wait, there's two of me and the person I can't live with anymore.
right.
And then he realized the narration in his head was not who he was. That realization wasn't a thought, it was an awareness
Mm,
and what he would call a separation between consciousness and thought.
mm.
And so, no matter how negative the thoughts are you're experiencing, what you can do is recognize there's a difference between thought
Yeah,
and awareness. And when you create that gap, that's when that insight happens.
right.
That's when the energy starts to shift.
Yeah, you're not the negative thoughts
Yeah,
that you're experiencing.
exactly.
No, yeah,
Exactly.
you're the one who observes. Um,
Yeah.
that's cool. So, thus far I've, picked up a lot of Eckhart from you, and I think also like some Advaita Vedanta, if
Yeah.
am I dialed in there? Is that right?
Advaita Vedanta. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you've also
Yeah.
done some more esoteric stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's get weird. Um, what
Sure.
what else have you got into? I mean, our audience is obviously pretty into out of body experience. Like, what's
Yeah.
your take on OBEs? Like, are they a sign of spiritual development? Is it something else? Like, what do you think is the value in them?
Sure. I don't think an out of body experience has to be a sign of spiritual development because sometimes someone just has one,
Yeah.
but it could be an opening or
Yep.
an initiation or an invitation.
Hmm.
And so I think it's interesting. When I started my intuitive development training, I went to a school for intuitive psychics, whatever you want to call it, for 7 years. And in the beginning, Garrett, I was always being told by my teachers that I was way too out of my body.
Mm,
Uh, and my nickname was Cosmic. I was up in the ceiling, I was up in the stars. I just couldn't get into my body. And so interestingly, for a lot of spiritual people who are sensitive, they're already kind of floating around, and that can make other people uncomfortable. Like you're too nebulous, you're too floaty. It makes me uncomfortable. So interestingly, the more you can get into your body, kind
mhm,
of that your soul incarnates, the more you can easily leave your body in a healthy, safe way and come back. So
mhm,
an out of body experience tends to be unintentional.
mhm,
And right, a lot of people's experiences, it just happened. I was on the operating table. If it's a near death experience, and then I'm looking down at my body, whatever it is, it tends to, you get knocked out. What I think that's cool. That's great. You got one of those, mazel tov, as we say. But long term, I think you want to learn how to consciously leave your body and come back into your body. So
mhm.
whether that's astral travel in your dream time or it's sitting meditating, I have, when I teach, we have different practices to learn how to do that in a very safe way. Because if you leave and you don't know how to come back, all sorts of weird shit starts to happen and you get ungrounded. Your life might start falling apart.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of spiritual people, their life falls apart because they just leave their bodies.
Hmm. Yeah,
But I do think
that's
it has
interesting.
value. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with all of that. I mean, for some people, they have OBs just because they've had a lot of trauma. They dissociate.
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
the primary benefit of it is, overcoming the fear of death because you really learn in a visceral sense that you're separate from your physical body.
Agree.
Um, and I think for a lot of people that are on the spiritual path, it might happen just naturally as a byproduct of, working through certain layers of conditioning, having a certain level of realization or a certain type of realization.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. But
But I've seen people who have that, Garrett, and then their eyes get really big
yeah.
and then they get really conspiratorial
Yes. And they chase
and
it.
they chase it and they start
Yeah.
tripping out. And that's why I can't overemphasize how important it is to learn to be grounded
Yeah.
in your body.
Embodied. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like to talk about it in terms of like the transcendent path and the transformative path, because like
Mm.
to your earlier point, like you can see people sitting in group for years, like sitting on the cushion and like they don't get past that initial layer of, you know, busyness of the mind or
Yeah.
that initial layer of conditioning. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have people that totally like kind of skip all of that. They basically bypass it. People call it spiritual bypassing, and they'll have transcendent type experiences. Maybe they even think they're enlightened. And then they come back and like their consciousness is ordinary again. And, maybe even stuff starts to fall apart for them. So
Yes.
you kind of have to, I think, come at it from both angles.
And
Um,
the proof is always in the pudding.
yeah.
So if I look at some really quote unquote spiritual person and they've got crappy relationships or
Yeah.
serious money problems or they can't handle their family or whatever it is, then those are indications to me that something's still not quite right.
Yep.
Yeah, you can have some beautiful realizations. There's infinite truth out there. You could also take DMT and get it. But if the proof isn't in the pudding, if you're not physically embodied and intentionally doing the work every day as a human, then I just don't think it has that much value.
Yeah, interesting. So, again, kind of going back to the school for intuitives, right? It was remote viewing part of that?
Remote, yeah, we would never call it remote viewing.
Uh-huh.
We might just call it looking at energy
Uh-huh.
from maybe the sixth chakra or the mind's eye. So there's a different, well, a couple of things here, and I'm sure you know, but your audience might not. So you can project yourself into another location. That's one form of an ability. The other is you can look from here and stay in your body and just take a look at an energy.
Mm-hmm.
And so remote viewing, I think, is very much coined. It's very much a military term.
Yeah.
As you know, the CIA had a program for many years to extract information for their own purposes. And so in my world in our academy, we don't ever use our spiritual abilities to extract information so that we could get ahead in life in that kind of way.
Mhm.
I think it is cool and fun and an interesting experience. I had one woman call me up once, I need you to spy on my son's boss. And I was like, no fucking way.
Yeah.
I had a guy call me once and say, can you open a safe for me? And I was like, dude, if I can open a safe, you think I would do it for you
Yeah.
for a little bit of money? And so I keep it, and the teachers I work with, we keep it very much tethered to our personal growth, to
Uh-huh.
working energy. So if it's not in the interest of your growth and other people's growth, then we just don't touch it.
Yeah.
And so it's useful. It's an ability to see beyond the physical form, and if you're a spiritually inclined person and it's fun, explore it in a safe way.
Yeah, well put. I mean, I've done other pods on the ethics of being psychic, and those are both really good examples of
Yeah.
what is unethical. Um, thanks for that.
Yeah.
So, do you ever feel a tension? So, I mean, you talked about being being balanced, right? But having your life in order as well. Do you ever feel a tension between sort of the business side of teaching meditation and the purity of the practice itself?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have so many people that work for me, and I have to make sure they get fed,
Yeah,
and
same.
as you do.
Yeah.
And so it's an unfortunate, in a way, consequence of living in the year we're in capitalism. I think in the past it wasn't a thing, and in the future I'm a Trekkie. I think far into the future, one day
Mm.
there won't be money. Not in my lifetime,
Yeah.
like, but one day we'll get beyond all of these survival things that, I think energy will be infinite. So will any material item we need.
Yeah.
That might be thousands of years away. But what I'm saying is we just happen to live in a moment in time where we need currency as an exchange. And so I think you can do things with integrity. And as long as you do, you're fine. And I try not to ever do anything just for money.
Hmm.
So has the energy has to come first. Do I feel like it's going to be contributing? There's value. And then as long as I'm coming from that space, it's okay. And one of the very practical things I'll do, Garrett, is if I have a decision like this where there's a tension between business and spirituality, I'll sit and meditate and I'll use that mind's eye and I'll look at that and
Hmm.
I'll parse through it and go, is this an integrity? Does this look like the right step? So the fundamental question always is like, is this the right next step for me? And
Hmm.
is that energy aligned? And there are tools that we can learn to be able to actually see that for ourselves and not just analyze into it or think or ask someone else for an answer. So the whole training I do when we do our intuitive training is around this question of how do I see my own answer? So if there's a tension, I'll sit and look at that and work on the energy of it, and hopefully a nice eventually aha or answer will come out of it.
Uh-huh. Again, really well put. Um, if someone's listening right now and they're feeling overwhelmed or anxious, what's one thing they can do right in this moment to begin calming their inner storm?
Yeah. So instead of trying to fix, heal, change, or even kind of unpack the anxiety, it would be better to just notice your resistance to the anxiety and where there's a filter, maybe a narration that says, this is a problem.
Mm.
That's where you want to start. You're already assuming that anxiety is a problem, and so because it's a problem, it's bad. I don't like it, and now I'm in a bad space. Instead, as an energy worker, we salivate at these moments. Woo, there's something to work on. There's a signal. There's something underneath it. This might be a breakthrough moment, an opportunity to shift energy. This is cool. And to go a step further on the energy side of things, is this even my anxiety? Or is it just from the mental pollution of the world? Is it from one other person in my life?
Mm.
There's many times I've felt something hit me
Hmm.
and I'm like, oh, I'm anxious. And then I look, with the mind's eye, I look and go, oh, that's somebody else's anxiety. And then they
Hmm.
text me with that anxiety or they call or they show up and it's validating and fun.
Yeah.
So just because you feel something doesn't mean it's yours. I'm happy to say that I think more than half our feelings are probably external that we internalize, that we digest, and then we spin out or we get confused because we don't know how to process them because they're not ours. So
Hmm.
if you're a sensitive person and you're bombarded with energy, you have to learn to recognize that and decipher, is this my energy or the world's? And so a
Hmm.
lot of anxiety is just external. And so that I think is an initial way to start. Be calm, be curious,
Yeah.
don't resist it as much, and let it be an invitation. And then the last thing I'll say about that, I love this quote from Pema Chodron: nothing goes away until it teaches us what we need to know. So if the anxiety is persistent, then maybe it's time to sit down with it, have some tea, ask it what it wants to teach you.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's great. Because all of these life lessons keep coming at us, and the more we resist them or fail to learn from them, like they keep coming back. And there are easy lessons and there are tougher lessons. It's better to
And
take the easy lesson. Yeah.
I also look at it, Garrett, like a spiral. So usually for most of us, we keep coming around the same thing over and over, same
Hmm.
type of relationship, career, financial problem. And I like to, if you're consciously doing the work, then it comes around again and again, but maybe every time you get a little closer to the bullseye.
Yeah.
So let that validate you. Like, did you do 10% better than the last time around? Did you lose your shit for an hour instead of a week?
Hmm.
Let's actually measure, are we doing better each, or am I punishing myself less this time around when I made the mistake? There's a lot of metrics here we could look at to see, maybe I'm getting closer.
Mm. Well put once again. So what's next for you, David? Any new projects, teachings, directions you're taking that
Yes.
we should know
uh,
about?
well, for those of you interested in sleep, I have a sleep podcast, and I get threats if I don't put out new episodes these days. People always always need help with sleep. So
Uh-huh.
grounded sleep. podcast. And then I'm doing a teacher training in 2026 for those who want to become meditation teachers. I'm teaching it with my good friend Michael Gallion. And I think the world is very deficient in the amount of teachers of presence. We have billions of people that are in anxiety and pain and they need help. And so we're going to be doing a year-long training for those interested in, whether you're teaching in person or YouTube or Insight Time or you start your own thing, whatever it is. We like helping guide people how to walk that path, maybe integrate it if you're a therapist or a healer into your own work, or if you want to straight up do it as a career. And so this is the third time I'm teaching this certification.
Mm.
And every time I refine it, just try to make it a little bit more impactful so people have all the tools they need if they want to go out and do this professionally.
Cool. And the best place to go for that is your site, right? You're pretty
Yeah,
easy to Google, but
just
yeah,
meditationschool.us.
meditationschool.us. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much for doing this pod with me and for creating From Anxiety to Rest with us. I think it'll be a really valuable tool for people looking to relax, hopefully get some better sleep, and also just serving as a great introduction into your work.
Thank you, Garrett. It's been a total pleasure. And if any of you, after you listen, you want to send me a message or have a question, find me, send me one, and happy to say hi.
Cool. Thanks, David. Take
Thank you.
take care, everyone.